Yeah, I like what you said, Arjun, pulling the bow back and withdrawing from the world. And so that's what we're going to focus on today, to be happy. You got to be happy yourself. And I thought, oh, I'd be kind of a smart aleck and start off. What do you think? Is happiness a worthwhile goal? I mean, would everybody just say something, yes or no? Yes. And there's no wrong answer. Yes? Who says yes? How many say yes? Okay. How many say nah? Really? Okay, good. Thank you. Why do you say that?
Happiness is very transient. It's short-lived. I found that chasing happiness sometimes can distract you, like to drugs, to free, something like, things like that. People think that's what happiness is.
Chasing happiness, yeah.
The meaning is what is more meaningful. Joy is more word that I connect with. Joy is long-lasting. Meaning is more long-lasting.
Okay, good. Give her a little finger snap. That's good. All right, and who's like really strong? Happiness is a really good goal. Who wants to? Anyone want to try to say anything? Go ahead, yeah.
I think happiness is the goal. I think what you're talking about is pleasure seeking is what we're not, is what will not lead you to happiness.
Yeah, good. And I'm glad you brought that up, because then she could say that. And yes.
I was going to say, I think you have to define happiness first of all to really be able to say it. Otherwise, people have different definitions of happiness. Sometimes it's peace, sometimes it's financial gain. Sometimes it's your children.
Yeah. And your name is happiness. One who gives happiness. Sukha. That's her name. That's literally her name. Yes.
Servant.
Giver.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel that we're really not in control if happiness comes or if happiness goes. But to me, the purpose is to be steady regardless. But I feel that happiness is something that's, like you said, it's transient to something that's given to us at different points of our lives. And sometimes it's not there, but the whole goal is to be equal in happiness and distress.
Okay. Good. And I'm glad we've got such a mixed audience. We've got people from other traditions. Because sometimes we get so caught up in our own tradition that when we hear it in a different language, it speaks to us differently. And also, I really like talking with people who claim to be atheists, because then they keep me on point. Like, we have our head in the clouds. I was a monk for 10 years and just living in a temple, just thinking of happiness and things like that. But when I get around atheist people, then we discuss, well, what really is the goal of life? What is our purpose here? And some of them say, well, purpose, there is no real purpose. I mean, there are some philosophies that say that. Absurdism. I go to a lot of college campuses and I love talking with people with all kinds of philosophies, and I learn stuff from them. And that's one point of view, that there is no goal, there is no purpose. We're just here to survive. And like what you said, sometimes we're happy and sometimes not. We experience all of these emotions, and to say one is bad and one is not, it's all meaningless. But I think most of us feel there is some purpose, and that's my bottom line. If I'm looking at a philosophy, I'll tell them, well, if you're not happy, I don't want to follow your philosophy. If the person who put this philosophy together, if they're not happy, then why would I want to follow it? Naturally, we want to go where we're going to be happy. We want to eat food that tastes good. If it tastes awful, a lot of times that's an indication there's something wrong with it. Don't eat it. So let's see. have all kinds of things planned for this, but no, we're just gonna be spontaneous, and I'm glad that I'm taken out of the normal schedule I was given, so I got to hear everybody else. And that's the way I like to work. It's, so according to Bhagavad Gita, that Narangi brought up Bhagavad Gita, and she pointed out so many things in there. But in there, it says that our natural position is to be happy. So you guys are doctors. This is the biology. When you study medicine, you study biology. This is the way the body's supposed to work. And then you study pathology, diseases. And then, okay, how do you bring it back to the natural condition? So the understanding in the Bhagavad Gita is that we are naturally supposed to be happy. That's our natural condition. When we go pleasure seeking, that's the beginning of our problems. It says originally we were all completely spiritual and pure, and then we become conditioned, and then there are these things that Narangi brought up, the sattva, rajas, and tamas. I'll be super impressed if you guys picked up on those terms. And who are you? Are you?
I live in Himachal.
Oh, okay, so you're familiar with these terms.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Sattva is loosely translated as goodness, and let's put up the picture. There are all happiness, according to Bhagavad Gita, comes from 3 different buckets. Can you make that bigger? Is it possible? You have 3 flavors, and I just drew that picture yesterday. I was going to draw more, but I thought, let's keep it simple. So the first flavor, at the first bite, it doesn't taste very good. And you were talking about that. You push yourself to do something, push yourself to exercise, you don't feel like it, but you do it anyway, and eventually you get the results from it. So the first flavor initially tastes bitter, then it uses strong language. It says actually it tastes like poison. And in Sanskrit, yattad agre visham eva pariname mritopanam tatsukam sattvakam proktam. So such happiness is said to be sattva, and it also gives atma buddhi prasadajam. It gives you, that kind of happiness actually gives you some introspection. It gives you some inner wisdom. It's not just pleasure seeking. Usually it comes not by seeking pleasure. It comes by taking care of things, by following your schedule, by keeping your word, by honesty. And so Bhagavad Gita gives a big description of sattva. We'll get to that later. I got some notes. Then the second bucket of happiness. At first, the first taste, it just tastes wonderful. I drew a picture, but I decided, no, I'm not going to use it. But just a guy with a great big smile, and who's just so happy. But then after, it makes you angry, you're not satisfied, and it turns to poison. So that's the second bucket. The third bucket, there's no happiness at all. All you're doing is trying to dull the pain of existence. You're so out of touch with your real, true spiritual happiness. The world, everything around you has become so painful. All you're trying to do is dull the pain. There's no happiness there. And that's what a lot of so-called happiness, what passes for happiness is just relief from some kind of suffering. We have a headache, it goes away, and we're happy. It's too hot, we come into an air-conditioned room, and we feel good. Or we go into a cool pond. In the winter, that same cool pond is not pleasant. It's dependent on the situation. So, just a relief is not actual true happiness. And so is there a method to re-access our true happiness? Well, first of all, I'll just start getting into my notes here. But how's everybody doing so far? 3 buckets, does that make sense? You got the ice cream instead of 31 flavors. Do they still have that?
I'm sure.
30, Baskin Robbins, is it still 31? I haven't been in there in a long time. Okay, so here we go. We're getting into some deep stuff. Quoting Srila Rupa Goswami, he describes the transcendental beauties and qualities of the Lord as, and then he gives a list of qualities of Krishna's personality: decorated, enjoying, pleasing, dependable, steady, and predominating. So, and then he goes into a whole description of what each of those means. And then he says, these are generally considered to be the qualities of great personalities. So a great personality is considered someone who has gone beyond the influence of the 3 modes, these 3 modes of nature, Rajas, Tamas, Sattva. They're coming closer to their real self, and they will also be enjoying, pleasing, dependable, steady, and predominating. These are generally considered to be the qualities of great personalities. And so you see some people that they go into any situation, even if it's an unpleasant situation, they seem to enjoy it. They just have this, they find something enjoyable in there. What else? Predominating, they're in charge. So these are the qualities of God, but we also carry these same qualities in very minute quantity. So that's our natural condition. So here's the example he gives for enjoying. When a person is seen to be always happy and is accustomed to speak smilingly, he is considered to be in the mode of enjoyment. And he gives an example. This trait was found in Krishna when he appeared at the sacrificial arena of King Kamsa. It is described that the lotus-eyed Krishna entered among the wrestlers without being impolite to them, glanced over them with determination, and seemed to them just like an elephant attacking some plants. Even while speaking to them, Krishna was still smiling, and in this way he stood valiantly upon the wrestling dice. So that's Krishna's nature, and that's our natural condition, to just enjoy every situation. Is that reasonable? Does that seem totally outrageous? It must be. Come on. Anyone have anything to say? I'm used to conversations. Anyway, if something comes up, let me know. And then we are originally pure, naturally happy. We've been conditioned. So these 3 modes of nature condition us. Let's see. And I had a friend to, she's gone. VG.
Yeah, she is flight. She has to catch it.
As she brought up, a friend of mine said, my wife and I, we were having a lot of fun. We were going to a lot of parties, but we weren't very happy. But then, after getting more involved in spiritual things, he said, it doesn't look like we're having much fun, but we're actually very happy. And that was just his honest assessment of things. So, all right, so now I'll go through these buckets. One type of happiness is entirely dependent on circumstances, You're happy when things go well and depressed when they're not. It comes from the senses contacting their objects and is very fleeting. So that's the bucket number 2, rajas, mode of passion. Now, you familiar at all with the yin yang, the black and the white things? And black is like rest and destruction, and then white is creation and action. So they kind of relate to mode of passion and mode of ignorance. And then when they're in balance, it's like sattva. But here in this understanding, we have that third element of sattva, goodness, where they're balanced. So destruction, creation, action, rest, both things are needed. When they're in balance, then that's good. When we take to sattva pleasure, it's not that we miss out on these other pleasures of resting and the pleasures of the senses. They're fully there. Let's see. And then here's the description of bucket number 3. One type of happiness is based on dreaming and illusion. Reality has become so painful, one only wants to escape. This becomes so dangerous, one may become suicidal. So, studying these 3 modes, I found this works really well. People from all backgrounds appreciate and understand these. Even people who don't, they have no spiritual ideas. It works with psychology. So I'll read a little bit more. This is given in chapter 18 of Bhagavad Gita. O son of Pritha, that determination which is unbreakable, which is sustained with steadfastness by yoga practice, and which thus controls the activities of the mind, life, and senses, is determination in the mode of goodness. So in mode of goodness, determination is unbreakable, and it's sustained. We have a spiritual practice, some kind of practice which keeps us in our real self, understanding, okay, senses are going everywhere, mind's going everywhere. I'm something different. So we have a practice to hold us there. Okay, and that practice thus controls the activities of the mind, life, and senses. This is sattvic goodness. These kind of people, you can't stop them. The next one, you'll see why, but that determination by which one holds fast to the results and sense gratification is of the nature of passion, or Arjuna. So in mode of passion, when things go well, you feel good. When they don't go well, you become depressed, you become morose, you lose your determination. So in sattva, you can't stop those kinds of people. And it's the same with, this gives some indication of where the happiness comes from. If our happiness is dependent on situations, then we're just being pushed around. The Bhagavad Gita talks about how to become impervious. Someone used that word once when I was out showing books to people, and this guy stopped and said, "Oh, Bhagavad Gita, that's the book about how to become impervious." And I thought, wow, this guy summed it up. Okay, then the third one, and that determination which cannot go beyond dreaming, fearfulness, lamentation, moroseness, and illusion. Such unintelligent determination is in the mode of darkness. So we've seen those kinds of people. Their determination is, if only I'd invested in real estate like what Lindsay was saying, if only I'd done that 20 years ago. Well, hello, you can do it now, you just do something now, but that's all they can do is dream. If I'd done that, if I bought it last week, it would have been a deal. They lament, all they can do is dream, if I had some money, if I could do this. Whereas in mode of goodness, you'll use what you have. And then here again is the description given in the Bhagavad Gita. That which in the beginning may be just like poison, but at the end is just like nectar, and which awakens one to self-realization, is said to be happiness in the mode of goodness. Next verse. That happiness which is derived from contact of the senses with their objects, which appears like nectar at first, but poison at the end, is said to be of the nature of passion. And that happiness, which is blind to self-realization, which is delusion from beginning to end, and which arises from sleep, laziness, and illusion, is said to be of the nature of ignorance. So if you've got a football team and every single game they go into, they do really good in the first quarter, like scoring lots of points, and then at the end, the next 3 quarters, they do terrible. They lost the game. Doesn't matter if you've won that first quarter. So that's Rajas, mode of passion. Mode of goodness, you come in, you're having a hard time in the first quarter. But at the end, you're winning. So every time you act in the mode of goodness, when you do these disciplines, every single time you're winning, and it accumulates. And eventually, it doesn't taste like poison in the beginning. It becomes a habit, and it just becomes normal, and you get closer to that natural condition of being happy all the time. When I met Prasanna, that's his name means happiness also. We have a lot of happy names here. When I met him, we were studying neurology, and we talked about the same thing. We had pretty much the same conversation that I just tried to present. Studying neurology, and I asked him, so is happiness just a neurological function? And we discussed that possibility. Is it a chemical reaction? Where does it come from? And then we just ended up sitting and talking every day for at least an hour. Okay, so that's all I have prepared right now. And we got this book here. This is 10 years ago, one of my jobs was, I have a commercial truck driver's license, so I was driving freight and going all over North America, and then they needed a driver for this bus. There are 2 buses, there's 50 kids in there, and we went all over North America, and so I took notes while we were there, the kids saying interesting, funny things, and the challenges that were going on, and I was trying to put into practice the things that I just talked about, because at that time, I had just lost my job. I had this wonderful job that I could just check in from any part of the world. And then my boss said, we don't need you anymore, and we're restructuring. And then our house was up for sale, and 2 of the top most anxiety producing things are losing your job, moving, getting a divorce, but we weren't doing that. So that was good. There wasn't even a threat of that going on. So she was tolerating everything, and she said, go ahead, you said you could, just go ahead. So I was driving around for 2 months wondering, what am I going to do when I get back? Where am I going to live? But okay, just focus on the present, do what needs to be done. And the main conversations happen at 2 o'clock in the morning, because the kids are out having fun all day long, get back in the bus. The buses are equipped with bunks, so they all go to sleep, while people like me would drive all night long. But kids were assigned to come up to talk with the driver at 45-minute shifts, just to make sure somebody's awake. And so that's what comprises a lot of the book. So if you want one, happy birthday. If you want to give something for it, that's good too. There you go. I'm going to close here, unless anyone has anything they want to bring up. Yes,
Can you enlighten us with one conversation that you had?
in the book.
Yeah.
Let's see. Here we go. All right, we'll do a little. I'll put on my book reading voice. Calgary, Alberta. Gordon Ryan continued his last 2 weeks of college studies while on tour, then took his final exam at the Calgary Krishna Temple on the busiest day of their year. It's our son, Gordon Ryan. He's the tallest one standing in both of us. Volunteers cooked and packed in loaded trucks with supplies for the Rath Yatra, while my son shut out the world around him and used the temple's Wi-Fi. Our buses had already left for the festival site, and the temple was emptying fast. When Gordon Ryan was done, I asked around for a ride to the festival site. The only thing left was the delivery truck. "It won't be comfortable," our host said, "but I'll get you there." We sat in the back of the truck on barrels of food bound for the festival. "How did you do on your exam, Gordon Ryan?" "I got an A." That was quick. The driver pointed to Calgary's highlights, which we glimpsed through the truck's tiny window. "They've built tunnels up here so people can walk from building to building in the winter." "How cold does it get in the winter?" -40, -50, life goes on. You do what you have to. It can get cold here, even in summer. We're lucky to have such a nice day. There should be a good turnout at the festival. Okay, so that was just driving to the festival. Another truck was parked in the loading zone with devotees unloading supplies. "They've taken our parking spot," our driver said. He rolled his window down and called out, "Hare Krishna, how long will you be?" The other driver answered by tipping his head from side to side. This can mean a lot of things depending on what part of India you're from. Usually it means everything's okay. 5 minutes, he answered, flashing all 10 fingers twice. Okay, our driver also tipped his head from side to side, but it was more abrupt, which meant he wasn't really okay with it, but he understood. He said 5 minutes with his voice, but 20 with his hands. I said, "We'll be all right. Why don't you join the festival?" Oh. Okay. And then we go out and there's the festival. The weather held all day and the sun stayed up late into the evening as local Calgary Krishna kids helped us pack up the tents. A leader called, "Hari Bol, grab a pole." Then 6 people lifted the tent by its poles and carried it to the truck where another team dismantled it. The first group ran to get the next tent. "Hari Bol, grab a pole," while the next team stripped the tent down and packed it up before the next tent arrived. The girls, wearing aprons and yellow work gloves, showed they could load the truck as fast as the boys. Quote, "Like packing our toys neatly away for next time." With the tents packed away, there was an opportunity to tease each other. A tub of ice cream appeared, and the kids took turns riding a tiny bicycle. Important life skills for young adults. Okay, that was Calgary.
Yeah.
Okay, cliffhanger there.